Finally, you're here.
Welcome, beautiful soul, to the Frequency DJ podcast, a place where you can find the right guides for your spiritual journey. Welcome, beautiful listener, to the Frequency DJ podcast with your host, Ruth, me. So, here we go again. It's been over a month since I've shared a recording, an episode with you, and something very interesting has occurred to me, for me, during this month. A couple of weeks ago, I underwent a facilitated mushroom journey with a powerful medicine person. It was one-on-one, and the purpose of this was basically so that I may travel in and have some questions answered and maybe some things shifted. Certain maybe traumas integrated, conditioning realigned, dropped even, fears, let go of any fears that are getting in the way of me wanting to be where I'm at, thriving in this life. I have been to many psychologists, counselors, healers of alternative medicine over time, probably in the last 15 plus years of my life, where things would get bad enough that I would eventually succumb to doing something about what I was going through. You know, sometimes it was just good to have a sounding board, and other times the people that I saw were actually really good at what they did, and they helped me, you know, see from a different perspective, which really helped. But it didn't necessarily shift anything at a core level, you know, at a foundational level. I've done years of this, trying different things, trying different modalities, seeing different therapists, different teachers, different healers. And I felt like it was all just chipping away tiny bits of this gigantic mountain of things that I needed to kind of work through. But it's interesting because I feel that the universe and life really works in a beautiful way where you meet the people that you're supposed to meet when you're supposed to meet them. And they're kind of like messengers, you know, they're universe messengers here to kind of give you a little snippet, maybe drop a little different kind of energy vibes onto you. So even to the point where you might not even know that an exchange is happening, but maybe at a cellular level, you're picking stuff up, you're integrating different things, different knowledge, different gifts. Maybe that certain people are here to open you up to yourself, to the parts of you that maybe you were hiding, maybe not on purpose, but open you up to things about yourself that you didn't know you had and are actually part of you because you're meant to share them with the world. So I don't regret any of these, you know, jaunts and brief encounters with different teachers, healers and psychologists and counselors and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate every single one because I know that every single one got me to be the person I am today. And I love the person I am today. I hope you love the person you are today. And if not, keep listening because hopefully this episode I can share with you some things that may help you. So I've come across this person of late in my life who's very powerful. And they suggested that maybe I take a journey inward with the help of psilocybin. And psilocybin is the active compound that you find in mushrooms. You might have heard of these little bad boys come alive from back in the 60s, Woodstock era, when people would take things like mushrooms, take LSD and tune out to tune in or just have a good time. See different colors, hear colors and taste music, taste sounds. I don't know. You're just basically tripping balls, right? So all your senses kind of get a little bit jumbled, especially if you're using it in not so much a medicinal, therapeutic way, but if you're just kind of taking them to party. It can really mess with your senses and jumble everything up. And that's the one. You can hear sounds and taste colors and stuff like that, where reality is not quite as it seems. And you feel a little bit like Alice down the rabbit hole. But for the most part, it's enjoyable. People have fun on it. There are the few cases where, people have, taken something and done something not conducive to their better health, and, in the very extreme cases have died from it. But that's pretty rare. And especially when it comes to things like mushrooms, it's probably one of the safest hallucinogenics that you can take. It's natural. It grows in forests, generally speaking. And it's, to me, they are messengers. They are Earth's messengers, here to kind of set things straight when you really want to listen. And especially when you're doing a facilitated journey. It's really interesting. I read a book not that long ago where the writer was talking about how prior to Nixon in the 60s declaring war on drugs, psilocybin, mushrooms, LSD, all those kinds of drugs. I'm just going to call them drugs because I'm not a science person. I'm not going to start talking science to you because, Anyway, they were experimenting. So scientists, psychologists, researchers were experimenting with psilocybin and lysergic acid on people, willing participants. And sometimes, depending if you were in like the CIA or something, you were participating in non-willing participants, had no idea that they were taking what they were taking, but that's another story altogether. So, they had the opportunity to do the research with these drugs on people. And they were especially using these drugs on people that had addictions, that, suffered from depression, anxiety, mood disorders of different kinds. And they found, especially with psilocybin, so the active compound in mushrooms, they found that even with a facilitator guiding them through their journey. So a journey can generally take, from 4 to 6 to 8 hours, depending on the strength, the potency of what you're taking. With an experienced facilitator that knew what they were doing, that knew how to guide these people through these journeys. And these journeys would be kind of internal. So, you would have visualizations in your mind, your eyes would be closed. Generally you'd have like some sort of eye cover, and they would guide you through it. They'd ask you questions, and then these questions would generate the answers that are already within you, in your mind, kind of thing. And they would find that they were getting such incredible results with all the people that they were basically researching on that had addictions. People would walk out of one session and never touch a cigarette again, or never touch alcohol again. One session, 1 8-hour session on mushrooms, and it would completely eradicate your addiction to whatever you had. And the percentages of positive outcomes were super high. Like they were just astonished. The researchers back then just were absolutely astonished at the results that these, little fungi would have on people, and even people with depression. They found that it would literally reroute electrical signals from one neural pathway to create a brand new neural pathway, instead of going down the old route that your brain would go down, say into like a depressive episode. It would, kind of scrap that and start firing with a new neuron and create a new pathway for your brain's electrical signals to go down. And it would just spark a kind of a new life within this person, and it's like, for the most part, no side effects apart from, better standard of living, no addiction, better relationships with people, more loving towards yourself, more loving towards other people, and it would just be, the results would be incredible, right? And then Nixon declared war on drugs, and there was only like, say, I think a couple of researchers that were allowed to continue using and researching and experimenting with things like mushrooms and LSD on people, and everyone else, had to scrap their work and kind of give up on this incredible thing that they were seeing with incredible results because of politics, basically, and money and greed. So it was scrapped for years, but there was still a little bit of research happening, which, is a good thing. But it's starting to kind of come back. There are countries around the world that have decriminalized and legalized, depending on where you are in the world, certain compounds. Things like mushrooms are legal in certain parts of the world, and there are certain parts of the world where you can, under clinical, I say clinical in quotation marks, just because set and setting, which I'll talk about in a second, is a big deal when it comes to taking these little guys. So you're able to go see a psychologist that is trained in facilitating with mushrooms, for example, and you can do a session with them, focus on a particular thing that you want to kind of work on yourself, and with incredible results. And this kind of avenue of psychology, psychotherapy, that kind of stuff is opening up, and it's almost like they've opened the floodgates, because there are so many people around the world, and I feel like especially in this day and age, this time that we're in, there are more and more people ready to hear the message that these little nature guides are here to provide for them specifically. So you dabbled with the idea for a while. If you know my story at all, just a quick update. I basically, I was a bit of a party girl from, my teenage years to my early 30s. And I took many different drugs, a lot. Lots of alcohol, smoking, you name it, all of it. I did it all. I was kind of distracting myself from what was really going on inside, until I was kind of over that life, and the drugs started not to work, or they probably weren't working for a while. And, there was a time where I was like, okay, this is kind of dumb now. I need to kind of change my life. So I did that. And ironically, mushrooms started to come into my consciousness and in my reality a couple of years ago. But I was afraid of them because I wasn't, taking drugs anymore. I wasn't drinking. I was pretty clean, relatively healthy, eating relatively well most of the time, exercising, looking after myself. And I thought, these guys are hallucinogenics and, I could completely lose my mind if I take them, but I was sort of in that world where people that of a spiritual nature were taking them and were just having these mystical experiences, and they were taking them with facilitators. So it was in a setting that was conducive to being well, basically, and mental health, and really looking after the mind, body, and soul while they were going through these journeys. Coming out of them, just having these incredibly potent experiences that really helped them in whatever way that looked like for them. But I still had this fear. I think back in my party days, I'd had LSD many times, and for the most part, it was fun. I'd take LSD with friends. A trip, half a trip or a full trip, or, they'd come in little paper squares, little blotters, or, there was a time where had the liquid in a little eyedropper thing, and put a couple of drops on some sugar cubes. And yeah, for the most part, I had a lot of fun, but there were a couple of times, especially one time that I can remember on LSD where, I kind of lost the plot a little bit, and my problem was that so LSD, just so you know, it's a hallucinogenic, but it's a chemical, it's a man-made chemical. Okay, so different to mushrooms, different to psilocybin, but similar effects. To me, the way I would describe it now that I've taken mushrooms is that it is very much like mushrooms, except LSD has almost like a grotty feel to it. It's got like a tainted edge to it. It's almost unclean. That's probably the best way I can put my finger on it. Whereas mushrooms feel super clean, super just natural and beautiful. But yeah, this time on LSD, we had it overnight, me and a group of friends, and it was the next morning. We were at my house and we were all kind of coming down, and I was like, oh yeah, the LSD's out of my system. I didn't, I smoked a lot of pot back then as well, a lot of marijuana, but I didn't like to mix the two because I've had, kind of almost dodgy experiences prior to this experience mixing the two, because they both, if you're not in the best state of mind, if you have them at the same time, you can really mess with your head, because they both have the power to do that. And so it was the morning. I thought, yep, LSD's out of my system. I can probably have some pot now. And my friends were handing me, well, they were passing around the bong, and I had a smoke. And not too long after that, it's like the LSD just came flooding back into my system. It's just like the marijuana just exacerbated, like it just brought it all back. And then I started freaking out, and I got to the point where I thought I was going to die. I don't know what what in my head thought that feeling was, because it was a feeling, but I can't say, like, looking back on it now, it's like it wasn't I don't know what the feeling of death is, but in my mind, at that point, that I had that feeling and I was going to die. And so I had to get out of, I went to the front of the house and just kind of walked up and down my driveway incessantly for probably about half an hour, and just continuously telling myself, you're going to be okay, Ruth. You're beautiful. You're awesome. You're amazing. I love you, Ruth. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're awesome. You're awesome. And I was just trying to pump myself back up from the very pits of despair that I was going to lose my absolute fucking mind. And I eventually got through it with the help of my friend. And yeah, got out the other side of that. So I guess, when I was thinking about mushrooms, and they started coming into my consciousness in the past couple of years, I kind of had that experience. And that experience was probably like 10, 12 years old. And it was with LSD and marijuana. So, not mushrooms at all. Even though they're similar, they're not the same. But I was freaking out because I was like, LSD, hallucinogen, mushrooms, hallucinogen. I could possibly lose my mind again. So people say that mushrooms kind of call you. And when you're ready, they start to, come into your consciousness. And, it's like you hear a person that's, went and done a group facilitated mushroom journey, or they've gone onto someone else has gone to South America and they had ayahuasca or mushrooms in the jungle, or, you see something on TV where mushrooms are growing, or like whatever it is. But it's almost like you're obviously ready. So your subconscious starts kind of picking up on those things, like, and bringing it into your consciousness, because even though your subconscious picks up on absolutely everything that you're surrounded by at all times, you're obviously ready, and your body obviously wants something to do with these mushrooms. That's why it starts to pick them up and bringing it into your consciousness, so that you can start to play with the idea that I might be interested in having a mushroom journey, as long as it's safe and it's with people that I trust, and all that kind of stuff. And if stuff tends to it's looking like it's going to go south, then they'll be there and they'll be sober and they can help me, and that kind of stuff. But there was still this fear. It was kind of just like a little tiny grain of fear in the back of my mind. And I'd kind of leave it, and I'd, mushrooms would come into my consciousness again, and I'd be like, mushrooms. And then I'd kind of leave it. And then again, something else would come up, mushroom related, and I'd be like, mushrooms. And then again, I'd leave it. And until it got to the point where mushrooms had come up that many times, and I'd obviously kind of for the most part, had dealt with the fear. Had been surrounded by enough people, that have told me their experiences and had great experiences, and, come across a person, a facilitator finally, that I was like, absolutely, I trust you 100%. I'm happy to do this with you, and I feel like it's time. Like I just knew I was ready. It was time. And so a couple of weeks back, we decided that, okay, it's time for me to do it. So set and setting. Set is, where your mind is at. If you're in a good set, means you're in a good mind frame, good frame of mind, that, your journey is going to be, for the most part, and predominantly positive. And then setting is literally the setting you're in. If you're at a rave in a warehouse, that's a setting. And I've taken LSD at those kind of places, completely different to taking, LSD or mushrooms or whatever it is, whatever medicine you're taking in a setting, say in like a nice, facilitated room with a facilitator that, is full of cozy couches and cushions and beautiful paintings on the wall and beautiful lights and all that kind of stuff that puts you in a really comfortable, safe sort of surrounding where you feel safe, where you feel good. So set and setting, that's what I was talking about earlier, which is really important. So your mind frame has to be kind of good to begin with. You're not like freaking out. You're not stressing out. You haven't just come from like a massive stressful day at work and then straight into one of these journeys. Like you want to kind of be in a relaxed state. Sure, there might be some nerves, and that's completely natural, and that's okay. If you've got a good facilitator that you trust that knows what they're doing, they can indeed put your mind at ease right from the get-go, and that is what my facilitator did, because they felt my nerves, and so they asked me about it and what my fears were, and funnily enough, when I really kind of thought about it, my fears were completely unfounded. It wasn't necessarily that I thought at this point and at this time of life that I would lose my mind because I'm having a powerful hallucinogenic, but my fears were that it would show me and take me to the gates of hell. And that was my fear, basically. And so the facilitator asked me, okay, so what's hell to you? And I was like, well, honestly, I don't know. I don't know what hell is. I don't really have a picture of hell in my mind. I wasn't brought up Catholic, so I don't have like a picture of hell as a fire and brimstone with the devil there or whatever, like making me do weird shit that I hate. I think that's what Catholics think hell is. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, so hell, they don't believe in hell, right? But they did kind of put the fear of God into you about demons and the devil, and how they're very real and how they can absolutely, take you over. And even that, like... And so my facilitator's like, okay, so that you're like, even if that stuff is real, like you are absolutely sovereign being, and any of that kind of stuff has no power over you unless you give it power. And I was like, fuck yeah, I know this. Cool, I'm good. So that fear of, hell was gone. And they even said though, like, mushrooms are here to show you something. Right? They're here to teach you stuff about yourself, stuff that maybe you've been blocking about yourself that you don't really want to look at. So, and that can be scary, but you're here because you want to put light on this stuff so you can clear it. You can clear it away from your everyday, from your life, from your mind, from your body. So if you do see the gates of hell, walk in. It might be scary, but it's there to teach you something. It's there to shed light on something that you've been obscuring from yourself. And you're here for that very reason. So when you see the gates of hell, if you see the gates of hell, what do? And I'm like, fucking walk in. And they're like, abso-fucking-lutely. You walk in. Same if it's the gates of heaven, walk in. See what's there for you. See what's there to teach you. Now, the facilitator then kind of made me feel relaxed. I was in this kind of low bed on the ground with lots of cushions around me and like blankets. And I brought my own blanket because it feels really soft, and it was kind of like a security blanket for me, which I felt was appropriate for this. So I had my blanket over me. I was warm and cozy, and there was like dim lighting, and it was, beautiful paintings and iconography around me, and I felt really safe, and I felt good, and I was ready to go. And they gave me my dose, and I laid down, and they talked me through what was going to happen. Well, they actually talked me through before I took my dose, but just know that it was all done very professionally. And then They kind of did some meditational visualization with me and talked me through that. What to expect, what not to expect, that kind of thing. And just to be open and to not resist. And I think that's just the thing of life, right? It's a good motto for life. Not to resist. And just to go with whatever was happening. Whatever was happening was good, and just to go with it. To go with the flow. And then it took about half an hour or so, and I started to feel the effects. And this was a journey where you just basically closed your eyes and you went with it. Whatever happened. It wasn't something that you talk through or anything like that. It's just whatever the mushrooms were there to show you. You were there for it. And you were open enough to experience it. And I started to have these sensations, these bodily sensations, which were really cool. Let me see if I can try and explain it. When it first started coming on, when I first started to feel the effects, it almost felt like all my cells were they were together, but they were like, they spread apart from each other. So almost like I inflated myself. I was a little bit more inflated because my cells were kind of separate from each other. They were still keeping me together, but there was like an energy flowing through them. And I felt that, and it was, that was pretty amazing. And then, look, it's interesting because anything I say about this journey from here on in is going to butcher the experience. And sure, you can get an idea from the words that I'm saying about the experience, but you'll never grasp the full extent and the felt sense of the experience. And that to me is an absolute shame, because it's almost like, when you see these beautiful photos of, for example, for me, it's something like Norway, where you have these massive, beautiful lakes that are just surrounded by these incredibly large mountainous peaks. And there's a person standing at the foot of the lake, and they're just this tiny being in this incredibly vast space. And, those kind of photos, I've never been to Norway, I've never experienced that myself. But I can kind of get the perception of how it could possibly make you feel. But then it's just a photo. Like, you're not there, you're not experiencing it. If you're there, it's a whole nother ball game. There are no words really to explain those feelings. I mean, and especially, I'm not yeah, sure, I did some poetry in high school when I was younger. But I'm definitely no poet, and I'm okay with words. But when it comes to trying to explain the absolute magnitude of this experience that I had on mushrooms, it's like showing you a photo, and not just a photo, it's blurry. It's a blurry photo. And stuff's all kind of mushed up, and you like colors are blurring and bleeding into each other, and you can't really make out, you can kind of see what's going on, but you can't get the clear, crisp picture of what's happening. And so I'm going to try my best. Well, I'm going to give you a taste, and then I'm going to recommend that you find someone that you trust, a facilitator that you trust, and you go have one of these experiences yourself. There were points where I was laughing. Like, I felt like all my cells were laughing. It's such a full body experience. So when I was laughing with my whole body, and it was fucking hilarious because I was having these insights, these little bombs that would just drop into my mind of, kind of cliche stuff, right? Whereas for example, life is so simple. To live a good life, it is ridiculously simple. But us humans, we have to overcomplicate everything so fucking much that it makes it so hard, and it was stuff like that. And you hear it. I say this to you now and you hear it and you're like, yeah. And intellectually, you're like, you totally get what I'm talking about. But these mushrooms, right? When you have these realizations on these mushrooms, it's like your whole, like every cell knows, every cell feels this realization. It's not just an intellectual concept. It's your body, it's your soul, it's your consciousness, it's everything that understands this to your very core. And when you fully grasp these cliche statements that are cliche for a reason, it's hilarious. Because then you get to the point where you're like, I was just laughing at the ridiculousness of the human condition. Because I was, my consciousness was part of it all. It was part of the universe. Like, I didn't feel separate to anything. And there were moments where I felt the ecstasy of that. I was actually in ecstasy. And the pleasure of that feeling of being everything is just inconceivable to the human mind. It was almost as if, not almost, I feel like it was as if, all my conditioning, all my trauma, all my fears, all my doubts, all negativity that I've learnt from past experiences had fallen away. Everything had fallen away. And I felt what it was like to be pure consciousness, to be everything and to be nothing all at once. And there are no words that I know of in the English language that can perfectly explain that to somebody in a way where they would completely understand and comprehend the words that I'm saying without you feeling that it's just words. Your mind can maybe grasp what I'm saying to a point, but there's that thing as well. The mind, while I was in the middle of it, I could see my mind and it was just this tiny little thing in this grand, vast ocean that is the cosmos, like everything, My mind was just tiny and it was so insignificant. And, it was even more hilarious when I was feeling all these incredible feelings like in my body and having these, insights. And my mind, I could see my mind trying to grasp everything that I was trying to experience and trying to box it and label it so that I could then explain it to other people when I came out of the journey. And that was hilarious because it was almost like, no, mind. You're never going to be able to do that. Like it's fucking impossible. You're never going to be able to label this. It's unlabelable. You're never going to be able to explain this properly so that people can really understand it because it's unexplainable. Like literally the only way that people can understand what I'm going through right now is if they experience it themselves, if they feel it themselves. But I can promise you that it shifted something in me. At the very core level, I now can say that there's definitely a difference prior the journey to after the journey. Where prior the journey, there was like this constant background hum of ever slight form of anxiety. Always there, almost imperceptible unless you really stopped to notice. And now I feel like that anxiety has gone completely. And I know that's not the only thing that's changed. And I'm still kind of integrating everything that I experience because it's, and that's something that I don't highly recommend it. It's like you need to actually make sure that if and when you do something like this, that you have integration sessions after the fact with your facilitator or with someone else that is knowledgeable on the subject and knows what they're doing. Because you can have these extremely meaningful and what I experienced, the absolute mystical experience, and with no integration. And I know of people that have kind of had this experience where, you know, they've had like mind-blowing mystical experiences and had no help after, had no integration after the fact, and just gone, well, what the fuck is the point of living this life? Because I've seen how incredible it is beyond this life, and should I even be here? You know, and being kind of depressed afterwards because they're like, well, what do I do with this knowledge? This life's fucked. You know, it's not. I promise you it's not. But it is really important to make sure that you have, again, I can't say this enough. Like, you need a facilitator that you trust, that you feel 100% safe with, and that will absolutely either get you to see someone else or see them after the fact, you know, 4 or 5 days after, however they work, as long as they're seeing you after the fact, to help you integrate what you went through. Something else that I felt throughout the whole session, and it was just that I just felt so held by nothing in particular, but by everything. I felt like, you know, and again, this sounds so cliche, and I understand that it sounds cliche, but I felt it with every fucking cell of my being, that I was being held by the universe, that no matter what I did, no matter where I go, no matter who I end up being and who I talk to, who I end up being with, or if I end up alone, or, you know, if I end up on the street, or if I end up dead, like, it's okay. All of it is okay, because this is just one part of your whole existence. Your consciousness never dies. Your energy never dies. It just changes form. Death is not the end. And these little fungal messages really bring that home for you. Death is not the end. This is just a small part of a huge role, a huge part that you're playing in this existence. This beautiful, magnificent, awe-inspiring existence. No matter what you do, no matter what happens, no matter what pain you go through, no matter what losses you go through, no matter what joy you experience, what happiness you experience, what love you experience or you don't experience, you're always held. Everything is always as it should be at all times. You are exactly where you're meant to be right now and always. You are perfect exactly as you are. Let go. Just let go. Letting go is probably one of the biggest services that you could do for yourself, for your mind, for your body, for your soul, is to let go. Let go of the illusion of control. Let go of who you think you need to be successful, to be somebody. A very wise person once told me, it doesn't matter if you decide to give everything up and sit on a mountaintop for the rest of your days, you'll still be a success, because you are alive, you are breathing, you are perfect, no matter what you're doing. And obviously I'm coming from a privileged perspective, people. I know, you know, that there are people around the world that would have very different perspective to me, and that's okay too. I don't pretend to know what everyone goes through, but this is just my experience. I don't pretend to talk about or know about what everyone goes through. This is my privileged experience, and I know that there will be at least a handful of you guys out there that relate to what I'm talking about. And that's all I can ask for. These little fungal messages, they are here. I truly believe that they are here to be the voice of reason, to be the voice for planet Earth, to help us truly see what we are, what we're capable of. I kind of went in because I wanted to get rid of everything that was holding me back from being wealthy, from being successful. And what I got from it was that I already have everything that I could ever possibly want or need. It's at my fingertips. I am abundance. I am the I am. I am everything. I don't want or need for anything because I am it. There is no separation between what I am and what I want. And again, it's a felt sense, like when you feel that knowledge in every single cell of your being. It just makes sense. Might be hard to grasp it intellectually. And it is. It is hard. I highly recommend you go on one of these journeys if you feel like you're missing something within yourself, if you feel like something is always in your way from getting you to where you want to be, if you feel like you've got trauma, where you feel like you're stuck in a loop and you're constantly playing out patterns of behavior that are actually really bad for you, if you feel like you want to stop any addiction that you have to any substance, any behavior that prevents you from really stopping and listening to yourself, if you feel like you're depressed, you're suffering psychologically from something, there are so many studies out that you could look at, research that has been done on the effects on people with psychological disorders, with depression, with anxiety, with behavioral issues, with addictions. So many positive results. I cannot speak highly enough of this stuff, but I reiterate again, if you want to do it, find a professional that knows what they're doing and kind of talk to them for as long as you need to talk to them before you actually commit to doing this thing with them, because you need to feel like you can trust them. You need to feel like you can fully let go so that you can get the best out of this journey and you can get the best out of the medicine. And then make sure that they integrate with you after the fact. They help you integrate what you have gone through, your experience, what you've learned, whatever it is. I feel like something has shifted, and there's, obviously the shift that I told you about already. But I feel like there's even more that I haven't even grasped yet that's going to show up in my life, probably soon and maybe even later. I don't know, but I know that I feel it. I feel it within me. I feel like there has been a massive shift within me, and it's positive and it's beautiful. And its magnitude is probably unfathomable to my human brain, my human mind. I don't know if I have anything else to say about this. I feel like I've said what I needed to say. I hope you have gotten what you needed out of this. I hope you got something from it. I really do. I share my experiences with you so that hopefully you can get something from it, learn something, grow from it, whatever. But that it supports you in your journey as a human in this life. In some way. That's what I hope for when I make these recordings. When I do anything I do that I share. Because honestly, like I feel like I'm no one, and my knowledge is so insignificant and small, and I honestly feel like sometimes I'm like, why are you sharing anything, Ruth? You don't know anything. And that's true. And I'm not putting myself down. I actually just, as humans, we know fuck all what there is to know. We know very, 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 very little about everything that there is to know about life, consciousness, our bodies, the universe, how soil works. It's just crazy how little we know. But when you kind of are okay with that, you kind of get that concept and you're okay with it, I feel like your life opens up so much more. You tend to be okay with not knowing stuff and be okay with asking questions and being curious and learning and growing from that curiosity. And I tell you what, having mushroom journeys is a beautiful way to quench your curiosity. Not that, I still haven't touched a grain of sand of knowledge with my journey, I know that, but I got something really big for me. I hope in your journey, whatever you decide to do, whether it's trying out mushrooms or whether it's, seeing a shaman or whatever the fuck, going to see a psychotherapist, I don't care. Whatever it is that you decide to do for yourself, I hope it's exactly what you need. I hope you get exactly what you need out of it. And it sheds some light on how magnificent you truly are. I love you. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in, you legend, to the Frequency DJ podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode and got something really meaningful out of it for you. If you did enjoy it and got something out of it, I would ask that you like, comment, and or share this episode so that others can get the benefits from this episode as well. And if you really loved it, I would humbly ask you to take one step further and go to my Patreon account, patreon.com/thefrequencydj, and subscribe to one of the membership tiers so that I can continue doing this work and share valuable information with you and people that care about what I am sharing. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, sending you so much love and lots of light. See you next time.